Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. It's Friday night, and what's today's date? It's August 9th, and we've got a great guest on tonight. It's Mike Zaite, Dr. Z. I'll be going
Hey,
back
how
and
you doing?
forth. Good, good. How are you?
Great, man. Great. Good to be with you guys.
Yeah, good to have you. Good to have you. Thanks for joining, man. And Dave, what's going on with you?
Not too much. I'm sitting here in Ventura, California, from a remote location today. But went to the Ventura Fair. It was fun.
Yeah, what goes on over there?
The fairgrounds here, just a county fair kind of deal, and the fairgrounds here are right on the beach or right off the beach, so you get a nice breeze through, and it's nice.
That's cool.
But we go every year. I don't know. Same thing every year.
Yeah, same thing. It doesn't change?
No, just a bunch of fair food and
There you go. That's cool.
some beers. That's
Some
it.
beers, lots of beers.
Animals and yeah. Oh, we went last night. We saw George Thorogood.
Oh, that's right. How was that?
He's actually pretty good. Yeah, pretty good.
Head to the bone.
Yeah, bad to the bone.
Was it had a good band?
Yeah, he still sounds great, man. Yeah, still sounds. I've never seen him before. He was just playing at the fair, and it's like, yeah, let's go see him.
Nice. Nice.
That's cool.
Why not?
Yeah,
Sure.
Straight up rock and roll.
yeah. And Mike, where are you located? You're in Nashville?
No, in Cleveland.
You're in Cleveland. You see, I always thought you were in Nashville for some reason.
No, no. Cleveland, Ohio.
Ohio,
That's awesome. That's cool.
sister state to Michigan.
It's not bad. Not bad.
That's cool. I don't know why I thought you were in Nashville. I guess it's just because I associate a lot of your amps with Nashville. So
Yeah, I do have a lot of Nashville players, a lot of country guys that play Z amps, and yeah. But
why do you think that is?
I don't know. I guess generally my amps are pretty, I don't know, kind of on the clean side. Not really high gain stuff. A little bit nicer for the pickers to pick at, and a lot of my early stuff was EL84 amps, and it seemed for a while there the new kind of breed of country players kind of went away from Petey and kind of leaned a little bit more toward Vox and the kind of EL84 amps of Matchless and John Jorgensen kind of led the way, I think, and a lot of people followed him. A Telly into a Vox AC30 sounded pretty nice.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how my original amps were done. So I had gotten a dealer in Nashville, one of my very first dealers. I had 3 when I started, and he had a little store, and it was outside of Nashville, and the name of the store was Mike E's. And Mike E was he had a cool little music store, and what Mike would do is he kind of specialized in kind of esoteric guitars. You'd go in there and go, oh man, my dad used to have one of those, or that was my first guitar. So he didn't really have prize things and vintage stuff, but he just had really cool pieces that he picked up. And it was a stop for a lot of people to go see Mikey's and see whatever he had. His stock was always changing. And for some reason or another, he took on my amp. And I was probably the only kind of new amp product, I should say, that he had in the store. And he did very well with it. The Mazes and all the early kind of Dr. Z amps he was selling them to mostly Nashville guys. So one day he calls me up and he goes, you're not going to believe, Z, but Brad Paisley just came in here and bought one of your amps. And I go, oh. At the time, I didn't know Brad Paisley was, unfortunately. This was probably, I don't know, early 90s, when he called me. And I think it was when Brad's first record was released. So I got kind of hooked up with him then, and talked with him and communicated with him, and just a great guy. We've kind of been working together ever since. But yeah, that was kind of my first foray into kind of the new country music scene.
Mm-hmm.
And because a lot of people dug Brad and Brad's style and tones, that kind of helped me, kind of get a foot in.
What was he playing before?
He was dragging around an old Vox. He had an old AC-30 that was very, very unreliable, and that was the reason why he was trying to look for an amp that was kind of new that he would be able to play. But he loved that, AC-30 stuff. He had a couple of old, AC-30s and tried his best to keep them working as he played.
Right, and it just ultimately became too much of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, and then he evolved into mine, and then started playing my amps, and I guess the rest is history. He plays a lot of them.
Which amp?
And he also had a train wreck, right? Too.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think he's got two original train wrecks that he bought.
Right.
Kenny was quite a fan of his. That was where my amp, the Z-Wreck, actually transpired. It was a kind of a trilogy between Kenny, myself, and Brad. And we kind of brought that amp together. Kenny named it the Z-Wreck. And he had quite a bit of input into the design. And of course, Brad did as well. And I'm the one who built it. So,
yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah. So that worked really nice. And like I say, Kenny always admired Brad. Kenny was a tele player, so being a Telecaster player, he kind of looked toward Brad as man, what a great player. And
oh yeah, amazing.
So yeah,
that's cool. So how did you get to know Kenny? Was that through Brad?
No, I knew Kenny before that. Trying to think back to my first conversation with him. There was a guy in Cleveland who told me about train wreck amps. Train wreck amps. Oh, man, I'm on the list. I'm going to get one, and they're great, and they're this and they're that. And I said, okay. And I kind of respected this player who told me that. So I think I just made a phone call and called him up. And if any of you have ever talked to Kenny, I mean, it's kind of a comical thing. Have you ever heard the Jerky Boys?
Oh yeah.
And a comedy group. Well, that one kind of New Jersey-ish guy, that whiny kind of sow.
Right.
And it sounds, I would have to bite my lip not to laugh sometimes, just when I was talking to him, because he was serious. That was his. That was, he was from New Jersey, and that was the way he spoke, and he loved to talk. If you did call him, you better have a couple hours, not to do anything,
right?
Because he would keep you on the phone. Very interesting guy for sure. And I think he, I don't know, kind of took a liking to me, because he didn't feel like I was trying to steal ideas from him or copy his amps or anything like that. He kind of knew I was an engineer. He kind of gave me a couple of tests on the phone, asking me questions about Tesla and this and that. And I passed the test, so he kind of opened up to me. And we became pretty good friends. Very nice guy, and kind of amazing in some ways, the knowledge that he had. And then in other ways, it was kind of bizarre too. I mean, he would say that he could hear the difference of different colored wire in circuits.
Oh, he's like Eric Johnson kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would say to Kenny, Kenny, I don't think that's a blessing. That's a curse.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to have that much input.
That's fun. That's funny.
That was him, and for real, and may he rest in peace. He was a great guy.
Yeah.
And he did have quite a few health problems.
Mm.
And that was sad.
Yeah, definitely sad.
But he never really made that many amps. I think he only made like 75 amps.
Wow.
Dave, I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's all he ever made.
Yeah. I've seen several of them over the years. One in particular, I always liked his Liverpool.
Oh, okay.
I was always kind of a fan of the EL84 thing that he did.
Mm-hmm.
That was a super great sounding amp. I remember one in particular, one I heard. Really great.
Yeah, he made a Rocket. That too was an 84 amp, and that was a little bit more based on a box kind of AC30 circuit. It was kind of his interpretation of it. But he made his Express, which was more of a gainier kind of amp, and the Liverpool was kind of an EL84 version.
Yeah.
Of the 6V6 or EL34 Express amp.
Right.
And they were very dynamic, and there weren't channel switching. They were very simple, but components. They were very specific to the sounds that he got. And as time went on, just like you and I know, Dave, it's so difficult to get parts anymore. I mean, no one's making stuff for tube amps, not electronic manufacturers, that make
really.
or resistors and caps, the voltage values that we need, because they're not used in anything except for guitar amps and maybe some tube audio stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of an orphan kind of business that we do, and it's getting harder and harder to find components. High quality components,
we had all our coupling caps custom made. So we do these Synergy Royal Mustard caps, we call them, and
nice.
They're all custom made, sort of off the the vintage,
right?
mustard cap kind of thing. They sound incredible. They're really beautiful.
Well, that's the way to do it. I mean, if you want them. You really have to buy a lot and have them made for you, and then you can have them.
Mm-hmm.
Tubes, that's another story. But, I got to say that I've been doing this for 31 years now. 1988 is when I started. It seems like there's more tubes available, than when I started. There was hardly anything.
Well, yeah, there were some dark times in there with tubes for sure, especially late 80s, early 90s, that there wasn't really much available. Like, I remember a time when the last of the German EL34s went away.
Right.
And there was nothing else.
Replace it. Yeah.
That was when Marshall had switched to 5881s because they just didn't have any good choice. So the only current production tube at that time really was a poorly made Chinese one, those thin bottle Chinese EL34s that were made for a while. Although those sounded pretty cool, they were poorly made.
They weren't very reliable.
Yeah, no. And then came out the Sovtek, the first EL34G or something like that. And they weren't quite there yet.
Right.
They later got it together, but
if you remember too, Dave, there were the Tesla brown base.
Yes.
Floors that Marshall sold into the and those were nice. They were rugged, but they were a little dark. They didn't really have the true kind of Siemens 34 sound to buy.
I love the Siemens EL34s. They were great. The German.
Yeah, they did a good job. Yeah. They did a good job.
Sounded great.
Took great high voltages.
The funny thing is nowadays, finally when I said Sovtek finally got it together, I mean their EL34 is reasonably close to the Siemens EL34 in sound. Meaning you can take two amps and put them in, and they don't sound that very, 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 very close. Like close enough where you're like, yeah, Yeah. Okay. That's good.
Yeah, I mean that's what I use in my EMS.
They're reliable. They're reliable too.
Right.
The EH EO34s have proven to. We had lots of problems with the EO34s because we use a lot of them, and those proven to be very reliable. We don't. I almost never hear of them failing in the field. Maybe they get old and they need replacing eventually, but I can't even think of one set even.
Right. And they're available, they're well matched, and they're reasonably priced. Comparative, trying to find a quad of Siemens or smaller, 30, you'll pay a king's ransom. At least you can get them, and they're relatively inexpensive. But Mike Matthews he likes raising his prices. The past 5 or 6 years, it's amazing.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. He came out with a lot of those the tongue saw kind of line, and man, they're very nice. I mean, I use the 5881s, and I've exchanged them with real 5881s that I have. Mm-hmm. They're not new old stock; they're pulls, but still they're the original ones.
Yeah,
man, these sound as good or sometimes better. Because they're fresh. They did a good job. Job. Their 12AX7 is nice too. That tongue saw 12AX7 that they made.
Yeah, that can be good.
Right.
Nice.
So, we can be thankful as amp builders that there is stuff coming out. At least tubes are available to us. It's not like they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really, Dave, they're really made for our industry for the most part. I mean, I don't know where else they're used. They're not used in televisions anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah. They're just made for good, amps.
Yeah, or like a high, like you were talking about, super hi-fi stereos, but and that's a small niche market as well. So it's probably much smaller than amplifiers, I would imagine.
Correct. That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they cost a lot.
Yeah, that like a Macintosh, one of those Macintosh.
Oh my God!
Yeah, a good friend of mine who used to work for Mesa Boogie works for a high-end tube company out here in California that not tube company, hi-fi company.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their own brand, Prima Luna, and then they also retail, $25,000 turntables and crazy stuff. And he's the service manager and stuff for all this stuff. And also they deal in, vintage tubes and new tubes for hi-fi people. And I get all sorts of stories.
I can imagine, especially when you're spending that kind of money.
Stories of stuff that's junk. Like Macintosh.
Vinyl, just like everybody else. I've got quite a vinyl collection, and I enjoy listening to it. I like that kind of achy breaky kind of sound that you get. That's kind of real and genuine, as opposed to some of the sterile digital stuff that's out there.
Right.
But there's no end to how much money you can spend on that stuff. It's once you get speakers, and then you got to get an amp, and then and everything's got to be of equal quality. Because if it's not, then all you hear is the poorest part of your group of equipment.
Right, the chain, something in the chain, and then you have to get like super expensive cabling.
Oh God, yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. So
let's not go down that road.
Exactly. That's crazy. Hey, by the way, we have a super chat, and I wanted to get to it quickly because it was a few minutes ago. Justin Espinoza. By the way, anybody who wants to get your question thrown to the top, you can do the super chat. He says, "Howdy, I have a Friedman guitar spec'd out, but should I get a JJ Jr. or go to Bruce's class? Love the show, Dr. Z, and all that's Friedman."
I guess that sort of depends on if you just want a cool amp or you want to learn something. I say do both if you can.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bruce's amp classes are great if you really want to learn and you want to build your own amp. I think it's totally cool.
And it's a cool amp. It's not a JJ Jr., but it's a cool amp.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
cool.
that JJ Junior's a hell of an amp. You did a great job on that one, Dave.
Yeah, that one's extremely popular.
Yeah.
In fact, so much so we
get a home
can't
run
think of
with
it
that.
as.
But you know, I mean, just to add to what you're saying, there's such satisfaction and joy to, and I still feel it, and I'm sure you still do too, Dave, as many amps as we've built in our life. Putting that thing together and bringing it to life for the first time and plugging in and playing it. Man, it's a great feeling. It's from the very first amp I ever made till the one I just made yesterday. You know, it's still a cool feeling. And if you go there and build an amp in Bruce's class, you'll get that feel. You'll see what that sensation is.
Yeah.
And it's addictive, man. It's addictive. You know, you bring it to life. You play it wherever you take it and play it. You made it. It's yours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's an onus that you have with it that, you know, it's kind of pretty cool. You know, there's a pride and, you know.
Yeah, and then you take the class, Bruce will tell you if you want to modify that amp one day, you want to make it higher gain, you want to do something to that amp, you've got the platform now to do it yourself.
And you know how to maintain it because you built it.
Right.
You can mess around with it. You can shock yourself. You can do all this.
Get a real good time.
You probably won't kill yourself, but you can shock yourself. You know, I can't count how many times I've been shocked, but maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, that's got to be a scary. I know I've gotten scared working on them. So.
Yeah. You know, like I've said time and time again, the longer you work on amps, the more careless you get.
Yeah.
Sure, I could put that part in while the amp's on.
Right.
You know, I won't hit the high voltage putting that bright cap in
Right.
until you do by accident.
Ugh.
Yeah,
That's
to
good.
get your attention. Certainly get your attention.
But as our head engineer at Boutique Amps said, he goes, yeah, you guys he's from Germany, so he goes, yeah, you guys have it easy. Try 50 hertz and 240 volts.
Oh.
He goes, if you get shocked with that, it'll knock you clear across the room. You'll be flying in the air.
Wow.
Yeah.
That reminds me of
literally.
That reminds me of the story that John Sir told us that one time with his necklace that blew the balls up.
Bending over the amp, and he had a necklace around his neck, and it was hanging into the amp, and it hit some high voltage, and it was like a little, what was it, like fertility doll or some little thing?
It was like, yeah, it was some necklace that his wife got him.
But it blew the balls off. Yeah, it was a great story.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, and he sent me the picture too, and literally the balls were blown off of this thing. It was so funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Alex, but can you imagine the necklace dipped in and it was wrapped around your neck?
Oh.
Not good.
That's bad.
Yeah, sometimes that stuff bites you and it holds on.
Yeah.
And that's when it's scary. But,
Yeah.
Hey, we got a couple of friendly guys that we know are in the chat. Michael Nielsen, what's up? From Big Hairy Profiles, Guitars, and Ninja Tracks. And also Sean Tubbs as well.
Hi, Sean.
Man, you guys, Sean, it's not out yet. It will be, boy, I don't know when, but Sean did a video for our new BA100 Deluxe. And man, is it a cool video.
Nice.
It's coming.
Nice.
You'll see it sometime soon. I forgot the date it's supposed to release.
Nice.
Thanks again, Sean.
He's a great player. Really cool guy, too. We do have a question from Michael Nielsen. He says, hey, guys, can you ask Mike about the Dr. Z Earthquaker Devices pedal collaboration?
Oh, okay. Well, you know, Earthquaker's very close to us. They're in Akron, kind of maybe 20-some miles from my shop. And, you know, Jamie's a pretty cool guy and really built his business up to an amazing kind of operation. He did very, very well and still is doing very well. And, you know, I kind of went to him and said, you know, Jamie, I'd like to do a pedal, but I don't have the wherewithal in my shop to do a PC board and do a pedal and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But would you want to do a collaboration with me and make a Dr. Z pedal? He says, oh, sure, we can do that. So we kind of did some prototyping back and forth, and kind of came up with some of the ideas that I wanted. There was a pedal that he did that I really liked, and it's called the Tone Job. And basically, it's a pedal that's supposed to kind of go at the end of your pedal board. And it's kind of a final tweak, a final tone tweak. It's an active EQ. So it's kind of a final tone tweak for everything that all your other pedals did to your tone. Kind of can bring it back before it goes into your amp. And, I kind of played with that, man, that's really novel. I really like the sound of that just by itself. And he was like, oh, yeah, I dig it. And I said, okay, how about if we take and build 2 gain stages around that pedal, okay, the Tone Job pedal. And he goes, okay. And, I always kind of liked, germanium, diodes, germanium transistors, kind of think of the early like fuzz face kind of stuff. Very organic, very kind of natural, not extremely high gain, but kind of a nice smooth sound. And then there's I don't know, whatever the chip is, the 4558 or whatever op amp that kind of gives kind of a MOSFET-ish higher gain. So there's 2 sides to the pedal. There's the EQ in the center, and you could switch between, basically a nice kind of overdrive and then a kind of a higher gain channel with a volume and a tone. They're not cascaded. We tried to cascade them, but it just would feed back. It was just way too much gain. At least I thought. So I said, let's just separate. Just have 2 separate channels. You can adjust them. So basically, with my amp in mind, like I said before, I make a relatively cleaner kind of amp. So you got a really nice bass, clean sound. And then you've got this pedal, which kind of gives you 2 more channels. So you basically got 3 channels if you use a Z drive with a Dr. Z amp. I've always kind of felt that you can't get a great clean sound out of a pedal. The amp's got to do that. And then you can layer on distortion and tones that you want on top of that once you have a good bass for a clean sound. And that's basically the philosophy behind the pedal. And it's done well. I mean, we sold lots of them. They make them for me. And they also there's lifetime warranty on the pedal. And if a switch breaks or something, goes wrong with it, they're made extremely well. But shit happens, and you just send them right to them, and they either send you a new one or repair it.
Right.
So they take care of all of that warranty stuff. So not that we've got to deal with a lot of that, but at least it's a nice secure feeling knowing that I'm selling something to a customer that can go on, and it's transferable, and it's got a great warranty, and it's a nice sounding pedal, I think.
Yeah, that's cool.
But when you talk about pedals, there's probably a new one that comes out every 10 minutes or so. There's just so many. I mean, we just got so saturated. It's kind of slowed down a little bit now. But boy, a few years back, there was just a new one all the time.
Yeah.
You sure it's slowed down? It slowed down? I don't know.
You don't think so?
I don't know.
Maybe I'm just not involved in it as much
That's
anymore.
a lot.
It seems like it's slowed down a little bit, but maybe it didn't. I don't know. But yeah, that's the Z Drive pedal.
And is that pedal? Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just curious. Is that distributed and sold through Earthquaker?
No, it's they build them, send them to me, and I distribute them through my dealers and stores.
I see. Okay, so if anybody wants to get it, it's through your dealers, through your distributor. I got you.
Through a doctor's dealer, we
Cool.
get one for you.
Cool.
Correct.
Sorry, Dave. What were you going to say?
So we didn't touch on this, but Mike, how did you start in this whole mess?
Okay.
When did you? Here's the standard line I use. when did you first realize you made a mistake?
Well, Dave, my dad was a TV repairman. So the basement of my house where I grew up looks very similar to my shop on a bad day. I mean, there's just tubes and radios and TVs and all kinds of stuff all over the place. And my dad was a very generous man. I mean, he spent a lot of time. I showed some interest in it. And boy, he really liked that. My other brother, could care less about vacuum tubes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, I was interested. So, he kind of showed me. And I went to college. I do have a degree. But they don't teach tubes. I mean, they mentioned tubes when I went to college. Mm-hmm. Like one day, here's the vacuum tube, and turn the page. That's it. So fortunately, I did have a little bit of insight from someone with experience. World War II veteran in the Navy, so that's kind of where he got his education.
Right.
And then shared it with me. And I was in bands, of course, but I played drums. Yeah, I didn't play guitar. I played drums. And we would have practice at my house. Because I was a drummer, I had all this shit that I would just have guys bring their guitar amps and we would practice. And I started, they would leave their amps at my house and they should only know the things that I did to their amplifiers as I was experimenting and trying different things. And that's kind of where I started it. I did go to college and went on and spent about 15 years in medical electronics. Worked for General Electric, some pretty big companies, and CAT scanners and MRIs, all that kind of high-end diagnostic equipment. But my love was always music. I kind of always was drawn back to that. And I guess, I was fortunate or blessed or whatever to be able to combine my love for electronics and my love for music and start my own business and combine those two things together. So I've been very fortunate, in that regard anyway.
Mm-hmm. When did you start the business?
Pardon?
When did you start the business?
1988.
Wow.
When I kind of put the shingle out first.
Hey, you were sort of one of the maybe not, but one of the first boutique brands, I would think, that you, or
right.
At least close to one of the first ones.
Right, there was THD, if you remember Andy Mark.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I knew Andy well.
There was, of course, Ken Fisher was for me. Dumble, I guess, was before us too.
Sure, yeah. I guess before, what I'm sort of saying is, yes, there was a few people before that.
Yeah, there were many.
When the boutique industry sort of started, it all kind of started around that time period.
Yeah.
Yes.
Around 87, 88-ish time period. Mike Soldano started around 87, 88.
Matchless.
You were there. Matchless was all around that time period. So it was kind of the birth of the boutique brand era.
Yes.
Why
do you think it was around that time? Was it just because of the industry wasn't delivering?
At that time, you had Marshalls, you had old Voxes and Fenders, and you really didn't have a whole lot. And the Marshalls were relatively archaic in what they did. Mm. Of course, great, but old ones. I personally, I think Marshalls stopped existing after the JMP. Not even the JCM 800, really, but everyone likes the JCM 800. But the JMP really is the same circuit. So, and before that, personally, I'm more into the old Plexi one, or
right.
The old four inputs.
When you talk about the 800, you're talking about 1980s. I mean, that's kind of when that started. So yeah, everything prior to that, the 60s and 70s stuff, that was the great stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny growing up. So I grew up in the 80s, as a kid, and you go into music stores then, and it was like old Ampegs, old Fenders, old Marshalls, Marshall basket weave cabinets, Marshall checkerboard cabinets, $300 for the whole checkerboard cabinet with original greenbacks.
Yeah.
$300, and amps too, $400 for old Marshalls. I remember one time I bought a 1968 Plexi PA head, and I thought it was broken, so I talked him into selling it to me for $150.
Holy shit!
And all it was it was set on 220 instead of 110.
Oh, man.
So literally,
switch.
oh, it's set on 240. Switch it, and you're like, there it is.
That was an easy fix. It was running at half power or something.
And you were. But still, even like my favorite Plexi 50 watt Marshall I've had since I don't know, around 1990 or something, and I got it for $300. I mean, but the stores were great. You used to walk into these stores and see all this cool stuff, and now I go, God, used stuff in a store now could be a Line 6 Spider.
Exactly.
Oh, it's just bad.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
or 2000 or 900 or something like. Oh God.
That's funny you say that, because I was just at Sam Ash a couple weeks ago, and I took some pictures, and like they had a row of. They did have one cool amp, which was a Super 6 reverb, Fender Super 6 reverb. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Oh yeah, was that the 6
speakers? Yeah, 6 by 10.
That was cool.
Yeah, and it sounded fantastic. It was. Really,
it was 135 watt amp head.
Yeah,
chassis was.
Yeah, it was.
But you had to be a pretty strong guy to schlep that thing around.
Oh yeah, it was ridiculously.
They went to top.
The best one for big amps for me is the. I worked on Neil Young's amp recently, which was the Baldwin Exterminator.
Oh wow.
So a Baldwin Exterminator, it looks like it should, belong in a bowling alley almost, but it's a solid state amp. It's a stereo amp. And it's got it's huge. It's literally up to my chin. There's like a 15, I think a 12 and a 10 and some sort of other something times 2. It's like the width of almost the width of a 412 cabinet, and it's up to my chin.
Wow.
And the funny part was there's one handle on it, and it's on the top. I'm like going, like,
I want to meet the guy that
look this amp up. Look this amp up, because it's really cool, actually. It also sounded amazing. It had this crazy sparkly, great clean tone, but it would grit up also and get a little gritty, and it sounded really cool, like really particularly cool.
What was the name of it?
But we were laughing at it. It's like, weighs a ton, and had one handle on top. I go, what do you need to be, the giant from Game of the Thrones or something to pick this up? Because like just like looking at the handle, I go, what's the point? It should have wheels.
Yeah, well, that's what
you could drag it.
That Super 6 had wheels on the side.
But man, was the amp cool after we got it done and the problem fixed, which was something simple. It sounded really cool. Like, I was like, God, I kind of want one of these.
Wow. And that Neil Young uses it?
Yeah, Neil Young uses it as one of his amps on stage, along with obviously his Tweed Deluxe that he always has had forever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say before at Sam Ash, they had Cyber Twins, Fender Cyber Twins, like 2 or 3.
The hot used Cyber Twins.
Yes.
Yeehaw.
Yeah.
That just makes me want to
puke,
jump out a window.
Yes. Yeah. That's why when I saw that Super 6, I'm like, oh wow, something cool here. Well, by the way, we had a super chat. Let me jump into that.
We do know.
Let me see where that is. Here we go. Jacob Cody Dave, Mike, since a lot of us in the do-it-yourself amp community start out building Fender Tweed-based kits, Champ Deluxe, etc., just curious if you guys have a favorite mod, tweak, etc. for a 5E3 Deluxe circuit.
Oh.
I really don't. I never really played much with that circuit, the 5E3 circuit. And it's pretty simple. There's really not a lot there.
Yeah.
And because of that, it makes it kind of difficult to try to do any mods when you got one preamp tube,
Yeah, I was going to say, what can you do?
Single-ended design. Components are the only thing I can think of.
Well, the thing you could do to it is the first coupling cap out of the first stage. You maybe could shrink the value. It'll get a little tighter in the low end. So if you're going to drive it a little harder, it won't kind of flub out as much. Also, it's important to use in that Tweed Deluxe circuit to use the lower gain input tube like it was meant to have, because was it 12AY7? I think
12AY7.
Because it's just, if you put a 12AX7 in there, it's just too much. It becomes kind of overloaded mush.
Right.
And so that's two things maybe.
Interesting, because I had an original Fender Champ, and it had a 12AX7, and like you said, you start turning it up to all the way up, and it starts to fart.
Well, this is a 5E3 Deluxe, so.
Oh, okay, because he mentioned Champ
Yeah.
in the.
Yeah.
I see. So the Deluxe is different. It's a different circuit.
Yeah, it's a Tweed Deluxe. I mean, it's a great amp. I mean, it's killer. But it's a little, you don't turn it up too much. I mean, I think 6 is about probably the sweet spot for the breakup. Maybe 7, somewhere in there. If you turn it much past that, it starts just kind of mucking up. And, it probably likes Telecasters and Strats better.
Right, single
coils. I have this theory about Fender amps in general. I think Fender amps in general were made for single coils. It kind of makes sense, right?
Yes, it does.
Because that's what they had in their guitars, and they built these amps. So they built it for those guitars in mind.
Right. I mean, if you ever saw pictures of the early factories, the early Fender factory pictures, you just see guys sitting there with Stratocasters testing the amps and playing. And that was all they plugged into them. So,
and in reality, a humbucker into a Fender is not that great. It's not.
It really isn't. You're right. It's so true. It really is. Yeah. Unless you're using a pedal into it, then then it comes.
Yeah. That can be used, but but really for the Fender to speak, it's like a Strat or a Tele.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. It's funny how that works, but got a really nice comment from Jason Hobbs. Mike Zaite. I said it Zaite before, and I meant to say Zaite.
It's fine.
I'm not trying.
Mike Zaite, the boutique.
Hi, Jason.
He says the boutique amp building genius. His amps are so unique from the rest. So
thank you.
That's nice.
I appreciate the compliment. I have to say that it's a small fraternity, of boutique amp builders. And nowadays, with the internet and with the things that are out there, you have to make a good product. You can't get away with making something that's substandard. I think everybody that builds an amp that's got it in commerce and sells it, they're all pretty nice. It's just whatever taste you like. Vanilla, pistachio, or chocolate, and you pick that flavor. And if there's a guy like Dave, like myself, like Joe Morgan, whatever, that are building amps, if you're building stuff, it's pretty good quality. It's pretty good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's the kind of renaissance that came about with boutique amp makers.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that maybe Jason is trying to say is that most of my amps are kind of original designs, I suppose, as original as you could be with 50s technology. But I don't really try to emulate or copy that closely to other amp designs. So some of my stuff is kind of original, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it is an evolution and a spin on everything else that has come before it.
Right.
But I do try to have a unique sound to
Mm-hmm.
my amps.
Yeah. Well, Jason
Thanks.
actually, he just
Thanks,
gave.
Jason.
He just donated to the super chat. So he says, "Doc," with many exclamation points. "How you been? How does it feel to be the best amp builder ever? Ever think about doing a Dr. Z factory tour movie after a new up-to-date, a sequel to the last one?"
Yeah, I suppose we could do that. I don't agree with you that I'm the best boutique amp builder. Yeah, I love my craft and I work very hard at it, but so do many other guys, and I tip my hat to them. But yeah, I did an AMA not too long ago, showing kind of the newer shop, and did a shop tour. Yeah, maybe it's time to do another one, Jason. Let me see what I can do.
That's cool.
I try to keep the AMAs, and what AMA is Ask Me Anything, AMA, Dr. Z. I did about 52 of them over the past couple of years. And it's getting harder and harder to come up with new ideas and new things to talk about for 15 or 20 minutes in a video. Once you kind of hit all the points. But yeah, I enjoy doing them. And I know that a lot of my customers enjoy watching them. So I try to do them. I just released a new one today, as a matter of fact, to plug my AM, if you will. So there's a new one out. And what it is I kind of thought about this one for a while. And it's how, when you go into a music store, how do you test an amp that you're going to, maybe buy an amp? What do you do? What steps do you take to make sure that the amp is functioning correctly and it's a decent amplifier before you decide if it's the one that you want for the sound that's in your head or the music that you play? So, I kind of did this AMA and basically just kind of went through the things that we do when we put a chassis together and marry it to a cabinet, put it in.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Mike? Mike?
Mike is the frozen face on our screen.
Uh-oh, Mike's internet might have gone out. Uh-oh.
Well, meanwhile, while we're waiting for Mike, I think there was a question somewhere back here. Where was it? I saw something that was pretty good. Oh, okay. Fred William asked, question for Dave or Mike: would 18-watt Haber power and output transformer be a good choice for a 6v6 standard 1987 Plexi? Most the impedance for the output transformer is about right for 6v6s. The power transformer also should be perfectly fine for 6v6s. So yes, I think you could do that. Should be cool, actually. Should try it.
Cool.
Are we back?
Hey, Mike.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Not quite sure I don't know if that was that me or was that.
I think you had a blip on your internet connection there. So
Okay.
no problem.
Sorry about that.
Hey.
You just froze up on the screen, and then, I went to a question.
That's all I saw too.
Don't worry.
It got quiet.
So yeah, Dave was just answering a question while we were waiting for you to come back.
Okay.
And so I had a question for you, Mike. So can you tell us about like the different types of amps that you make? Like how you would describe the different ones and what's the line of amps that you have for people who aren't familiar?
Okay, well, my probably one of my biggest joys is designing and coming up with a new product. To date, I've had 47 different models. So there were 47 different Z models.
Wow.
And right now I'm probably currently making 16. So always kind of bringing in a new one, getting rid of an old one, or whatever. I have legacy models. I don't know quite how to answer your question, Mark, because I go from one spectrum to the other. I guess if I were to try to put it in a box,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that when I started out, it was mostly English stuff. I always loved, the early Beatles stuff and Vox AC30s, and that's how I kind of emulated my designs. And, I started out with the Carmen Gia, which basically was a Hammond reverb chassis that I kind of modified into a guitar amplifier. And I still make it today, 31 years later, exactly the same way that it was. I evolved into the Maz series, which was the Maz 38, which was kind of a 4 EL84 amp. But what I tried to do was make a gumbo. I said, I like Vox, I like Fender, I like Marshall. How about if I combine all three of those little elements of the sounds of those three amps into one and come up with my own, basically. Mm-hmm. They didn't sound exactly like a Vox or exactly like a Fender or exactly like a Marshall, but there were elements in there, and people can glean different sounds out of it. So that was kind of the evolution of my designs, how I kind of went forward. Built amps like the Prescription,
nice.
Which was a very percussive EL84 amp.
Mm-hmm.
Then I kind of did a spin with EF86s. I did the Route 66 and the Z28 and KT45 and Delta 88. And basically, that was the same kind of front end, but with just different output tubes. Either KT88s or KT66s.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And kind of had a family, if you will, of amps that was kind of evolved from that one design. And that was pretty successful. It kind of gave different wattages and different tastes. I've kind of evolved a little bit lately, in the last maybe 10 years or so, or less, 7, 8, 10 years, into more of an Americana kind of voiced amp. It seems that's where the pendulum had swung at that time. People were getting a little tired of EL84 amps, say about 10 years ago. Looking for something new. And so I started to do 6V6 designs. And 6L6 design. So, I've kind of gone a little bit from British, a little bit more toward Americana.
Mm-hmm.
But none of my amps are, kind of clones or copies directly of any one design, but kind of my interpretation of them, if I could be so bold.
No, that's great. I was just curious, for those who want to get an understanding of kind of what kind of tones or things that they can get from your amps. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, being a businessman, I kind of look at it and say, what do people want? Can I paint with the broadest brush and try to make a bunch of stuff that's varied? But generally, it seems people want lower wattage stuff. Clubs aren't like they were, when I played. When there weren't big PAs and you were forced to do your own sound reinforcement with your equipment. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, if they can't hear the drink order, the owner of the bar is telling you to turn down, and it's certainly not like it used to be. So that was the advent of the attenuators and the 10 watt, 12 watt, 15 watt amps that are very much in vogue today.
Oh yeah, and your attenuators are a big product. At least for when I used to be on the gear page many years ago, That was a very well-known product to use, especially in combos.
Right. Yeah, actually, I mean, I licensed that from Ken Fisher. Basically, that was Ken's, air brake.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
It was a kind of a nice thing, and it still is, but it's basically a live device. It's a unit to go on stage. You go play 9 o'clock. There's 10 people in the bar. You want to get your tone. You reach back. You give your attenuator a couple of clicks. You knock the edge off the sound a little bit, and you play. And as the night goes on, hopefully people are drinking and there's more people there. You can take it and click it back to 0 and not have it there. Nowadays, there's quite a bit more sophisticated attenuators, which basically, to my idea, are more like speaker emulators, kind of, or cabinet or speaker emulators. And they kind of do a lot more and kind of help people more in recording applications than they really do live playing applications. So, that product has changed, but Kenny's air brake is still pretty much what we make, and it's resistive basically, and it does a decent job of what it does. It doesn't really use some of the more expensive components that speaker emulators do that bring the prices to $800-900 for these attenuators. So it's all what you want. It's all the application that you use.
It sounds great, though.
Yeah,
I think that attenuator sounds great.
Thank you.
I mean, you don't want to go down to whisper volumes with it, but yeah, knocking a few dB off, knocking it down. I think it sounds great for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Ken did a great job. I mean, it's basically that same design that he did. And there was actually a couple of us that did it. Kendrick kind of had his variation of it.
Yeah.
And so does Comet. Comet has their variation of Kenny's train wreck. And, kind of funny, I'll tell you a little story. I mean, when I asked Kenny to license it, he says, yeah, okay. And I had to send him like $20 for each one, or whatever the license agreement was. I believe that's what it was. And what I would have to do is send Kenny cash in like a UPS or a FedEx envelope. And it was like doing a drug deal, basically.
Yeah.
And the reason being is Kenny was on disability.
Oh.
So he had to be careful of whatever income he got in that would affect his ability to get his medicines and have his proper disability. So,
right, and they monitor that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that kind of worked out good for him. And I would send him, and I sold tons of those things, man. I can't even tell you how many I did. So finally one day I said to him, I says, Kenny, man, I've been sending you, $1,000 a month for I don't know how many years now. When am I going to have this thing paid for? When's the license agreement going to end? And he says, as long as you're making them and I'm still alive, you got to send me the money. I said, okay, Kenny, I'll send you the money. So I did.
That's funny.
Who's to argue?
Right.
That's great.
So,
that's a great story.
Yeah, sorry. So they, and I'll tell you what, I kind of did a cool thing with the built-in attenuator. I made a littler one using smaller valued resistors. It really is. I kind of rated it 45 watts, even though it'll handle a bit more than that. But I rate it safely at 45 watts, and you can mount it inside your combo.
Which is very
wire that connects to the speaker and one that connects to the amp, and you got a little rotary switch and it mounts in. So you always have it, and you don't have to worry about, did I bring it? Do I have a cable? Do I have this? Do I have that? It's there, and it'll work on anybody's amp. I mean, it'll work on a Fender. It'll work on a Marshall. It'll work on a Dr. Z. It'll work on a Friedman combo. It'll work on anything. So because of the universality of that, I don't know if that's a word or not. It certainly sold quite a few, and I still do. I mean, I still sell quite a few of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very cool product. It is.
Yeah.
We got a question from Purposeful Porpoise. Dave, hey guys, would playing a dime super lead without a head shell or case help with the amp not blowing up from being cranked? Maybe it keeps it cool?
Well, how about just leave the back off your amp instead of doing that? Because actually you get shielding from the bottom of the head shell with that amp, and especially like an old amp like that cranked on 10, you're going to have maybe some oscillation issues without that shielding. Just a thought. It's fine as long as you have good tubes in it. You can just beat the piss out of it. It's okay.
There you go.
If you don't have good tubes, well, it's going to fail.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, like my 50-watt Marshall that I've had, literally, I've had one set of tubes. Well, first of all, when I first got that amp in 1990, it had Telefunk and EL34s in it, and I had those tubes in it probably till 2000.
Wow.
Until they finally they didn't actually totally die. They just started sounding bad. So they worked forever. And then since then, I've had the same set of tubes in it. Granted, since then I don't use it a ton. So, if you have a good set of tubes, it should be fine.
Right. We have.
I don't agree with changing your tubes all the time. I sort of think if the amp still sounds good, leave the tubes alone, because they're obviously been working for a long time for you. They've proven to be really reliable. Unless something's going wrong or sounding bad, don't change them. Because just because you got new tubes does not mean they're going to be good.
Exactly.
It does not mean they're going to last. It does not. You don't know. So you put a new set of tubes in, and now it's an untested. I mean, you can test it, of course, obviously when you put the tubes in, but uncharted territory.
Right.
You know, now if you gig with it for a while, are these tubes going to fail? Or are they going to be good? I don't know. We'll see.
It's a crapshoot.
If it's EL34, it's probably going to work.
Right.
But
cool.
Just a thought. I mean, it's like I remember the days when it was like, yeah, let's change our tubes every year and this and that, and I don't know if I totally agree with that anymore. Just because I kind of think if you have a great set of tubes in it and it's sounding good still, why change them?
Right.
Yeah. Plus, you don't know if it's going to sound any better, even if the tubes work.
Yeah, it probably isn't going to sound better.
Right.
It's going to change the sound, and just like Dave said, it's a crapshoot. What you're putting in there, how do you know? How do you know if they're going to last?
I mean, it could work great for 2 weeks.
Right, infant mortality, man. That's
or it
like
could work for 2 years and fail. We don't know yet.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Just some thoughts, random thoughts. What's the peanut gallery here?
We got a question from Jay. Dr. Z, can you talk about what you did to massage the EMS amp's design from the amp it's based on?
Well, you know, I kind of approached it with the idea of going through and putting an amp together that basically covered 3 generations of 50-watt Marshalls. I did a tube rectifier in it, which is switchable, to kind of take care of the JTM 50 kind of variation. Kind of did a solid state plug-in to basically take care of the next generation, JMT generation of 50 watts. And then did a cascaded gain stage on it to do the JCM 800, a kind of gainy kind of amp. So kind of threw the three together and made an amp that can do all of those sounds basically, because they are, just like Dave can attest, it's all just a variation of that same design, the cathode follower kind of circuit that Marshall used. And what I found kind of helped me make it sound very good. I do use the EL34s in it, as Dave contests. But it was getting the output tranny. I found a guy that had a really nice kind of Drake output tranny design, 50-watt Marshall output tranny design, that he sent me one, and I said, man, once I put it in, I was using kind of trannies of mine, and they were close, but no cigar. But man, once I put that one in, it was bingo, man. There's the sound. As we all know, the output transformer is the heart of a tube amp. I mean, that's kind of 70% of your sound comes from that. If it's right, that's what's driving the speaker. That's what you hear. So once I kind of got that Drake copy output tranny, and it was a very good duplication of those early transformers that Marshall output trannies that Marshall made, I was like, wow, sounds pretty good. So that was kind of the.
Was it made by Haybor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Haybor are my favorite output transformers always.
Yeah, they do a good job. I kind of made an AC 100. This was for Brad. He always got these ideas and always sees things he wants. And he was able to find an old AC 100.
Oh boy.
Kind of going back in the story, he used a 100-watt Marshall that was Keith Richards' old 100-watt Marshall. How he got it is his tech, Dave Rose, was Keith's tech for a while, and Keith kind of gave Dave this amp.
Wow.
So one day they were rehearsing. Dave came in with it under his arm and said, "Hey, Brad, check this out." And Brad does like to layer all different kind of amps together, and probably for the fan, the basic country music fan, they might not be able to discern a Fender and a Marshall and a Vauxhall kind of blended together in a song that he plays. But, Brad can, he's got those kind of ears. He knows what he wants. He can hear that. It keeps him interested, and keeps it kind of fresh for him. So he's kind of always experimenting with different stuff.
Aren't we all?
So he used Marshall, and he used it for half a tour or whatever. But it kind of got to be a little too crunchy for him, a little bit harder sounding than he wanted it to sound for his country-based music. But he did love the authority and the sound that 100-watt Marshall had when he layered it in with his EL84 amps and whatever. So he went out and found an AC 100. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with what those are, but basically those were built, Paul McCartney.
Those are the Beatles. Those are the Beatle amps, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Approached and said, these AC30s, they ain't doing it in these screaming arenas that we're playing. I need something with a bit more power. So they built this for him, and it was for, EL34s. Individually biased, kind of a unique design, and it was a silly thing. I mean, I don't know. I hate to diss any engineer, but Vox took their most powerful amp that they ever made and stuck it in the smallest cabinet that they ever made. I mean, it just had it had overheating problems. It was kind of plagued with them. The original ones were cathode biased, and boy, they did really sound good, man. They had that unique sound to them, like a big AC30. But they ended up evolving it to a fixed bias amp, which gave it a little bit more power, but let it run a little bit cooler, more in a Class 8B type configuration. And they had a little bit better luck with it. But the original ones, like, guitar players those are the ones that people covet and want. So Brad picked up a couple of them, and, he asked me to duplicate it. He goes, man, can you make something that's reliable that I can take on the road? So I did some research, and there's a lot of information out about these amps. I mean, it's amazing. You go to the internet, you can find out so much stuff. And actually, I went to Haybor, and the one guy at Haybor, Phil, just said, he says, I blueprinted one of those. I got it in my computer. I got the design for that original transformer because the transformers blew. I mean, everything blew. It just overheated like crazy. So I says, wow. I says, cool. I said, make me one. And so he did. And because of that, then I was able to kind of capture the sound of that amp, and I make it. I kind of do them as what I call a master build, if you will. I kind of build them. I do it myself. I do everything, the board, the chassis, the amp. And I build it from start to finish. I don't make too many of them. I probably only made maybe 6 so far. But they're kind of cool. And man, they sound like nothing else. I had one on stage at Earthquaker Days last weekend. When Jamie does Earthquaker Days, he kind of asked me to kind of backline his stage for him with amps, and I always give him a couple of amps for him to use. So this year I gave him a Z80, is what I call it, and with 2 goals in a 212 cabinet. And I guess it got pretty rave reviews. People really dug it. They were like amazed at how this amp sounds.
That's
and
awesome.
It does sound really, really good. But so Brad kind of left the Marshall and started using that. So now he's using, the Z80 basically on the road. I put a fan. I built a fan into it, just to kind of cool it, just to keep it so that it'll last a show,
Right.
But yeah, pretty cool. A pretty cool amp.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Love to hear how it sounds.
Yes.
We had a super chat question from Jimmy Page, although his name is Vern from Massachusetts.
His name's Vern now.
But thanks, Vern, from with the AKA Jimmy Page. He's from Massachusetts, and he says, thanks, Dave and Mark, for the best show on YouTube. Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate that. Dave, my question is, do you have any plans to put the Steve Stevens clean channel into a 50-watt amp? Thanks.
Not currently, but it's not out of the question that it could be done custom.
There you go.
Like, we could take a BE50 Deluxe and put that clean channel in it. So
there you go.
That could be done.
Cool. So the Fun Box Ohio wrote.
I say the proper word, master build.
There you go. Yeah, master build.
I like that.
Feel free, Dave.
It's like the master build. It's like, do you really want me making it? You probably would rather have one of my guys do it than myself personally, but okay.
Universality. Got it. The Fun Box Ohio. I think he was referring.
Oh, and I gotta say, Sean Tubbs, I think I owe you a bottle of something now. You've said so many good things in this chat that I'm gonna send you something. Send me your address.
Oh wow, I haven't seen Sean's stuff.
Lots of good stuff.
Cool. We've got a comment from Lucky Licks. He says, trivia. Which vacuum tube factory was almost closed down a few years ago? The precious tube recipes were almost destroyed. Who was this person? Was it Nam who stepped in and saved the situation? Do you know? I have no idea.
I have no idea either.
You want to let us know, Lucky Lex? I have no clue.
Yeah, let us know. It might be something we just forgot.
Yeah. Let's see. The Guitar Guru Network asks, "Hey Dave, are you able to speak about which amps are next to get the deluxe treatment?"
Oh God. Nothing. The deluxe treatment. Nothing currently. There's going to be some deluxe treatment. There's going to be some redos. Well, no, nothing currently. No definitive plans.
Okay. Craven Moorhead.
I'm just not saying.
What's that?
Or it could just be, I'm just not saying.
Okay. I'm just going to go through the chat with some questions with folks, if that works for you guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Craven Moorhead says, "I'm looking for a great playing humbucker guitar. Any suggestions?" Well, I would say get yourself a Cali, a Friedman Cali. Humbuckers. But there's so many.
I mean, that's hard to say. It just depends on what.
He says to match with his small box.
Oh, Cali would be great. I mean, it depends what you're looking for, though. I mean, like, are you looking for more of a Les Paul kind of thing? Or are you looking for a Super Strat kind of thing? Or Cali's great. Sure.
Okay. David Spicer, good day from Sydney, Australia. Top of the morning down here. That's what I love about that. I mean, we could be online and there's people viewing all over the world. That's so cool. Thanks, David,
nice.
for viewing in. And Stan Adams says, "I missed the real deal old Svetlana 6L6s." I think that's what he means. Oh, no, he says Sylvania 6L6s.
Yes. Those were great. And the 68.7s. Those were really great, too.
Yes.
And GE 6550s. As far as 6550s go, they were the ones.
Really?
Yeah, those were great. Even guitar amps, those sounded cool. Cool.
G-Man Music says, "Dave or Mike, do you recommend using a Variac to ensure proper voltage? If so, what brand without breaking the bank?"
Well, I mean, if your voltage is too high in wherever you're living, I think a Variac or something like that, maybe a brown box, is a cool idea, because guitar amp at 126 volts is a little brittle sounding to me. I'd rather see it down around 117 or 115 even. It's definitely has a slightly sweeter tonality to it. You can do this with a Variac, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get various Variacs online for, I don't know, I don't even know what they go for these days. $100?
$100, yeah. You can go on Amazon, eBay.
It's a Chinese Variac that you can get. It's perfectly fine. It might fall apart eventually, but I mean But you don't have to spend a lot on it.
No.
5 amp Variac or something is perfectly fine. I mean, that'll cover anything up to 100 watt amp.
The one thing I would recommend, though, if you do get a Variac, like a Chinese Variac, is measure the voltage coming out of your wall with a multimeter, and also measure the voltage that's coming out of the Variac, because I noticed that my Variac, when I put on, if I put it on to say 115 on the dial, that's not what's really coming out.
It doesn't match.
It doesn't match at all. You really need to go in with your multimeter and see what's coming out of your Variac because
every time you use it, every time you use it, yeah.
It's all dependent on what's going in, kind of. So
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, the numbers on the dial mean nothing if you have 126 volts going in. That's 6 6 volts higher than the what it's supposed to see, so everything's going to be skewed on those numbers on top.
Oh, that's how it works?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And when you talk about variacs, I would say it's probably pretty important if you have vintage amplifiers, because those older vintage amplifiers were made to run at 115 or 117. That was the wall voltage at the time they were made. Mm-hmm. And right now, you go to Nashville, it's 126, just like Dave said. Right. And think about this. Depending upon the output tubes that are in the amp. Now, if you have 6, say, EL84s, they're very sensitive to higher voltages.
Oh, yeah.
And your power transformer is a step-up transformer. Basically, a 3 times step-up. Okay, you have 120 volts coming in, you get about 340 or 360 on the other side. Okay, it's DC, it's inverted, but basically an easy way to look at it is a 3 times step up. So if you have 6 or 7 volts more coming out of your wall, if you're at 127 or 126, 127, you're going to increase the voltage on the other side of that transformer by 21 or 22 volts. Now, an EL34, a 6V6, they can kind of handle an extra 15, 20 volts and not break a sweat, but not an EL84. You're going to push that way beyond its design center when you have too much wall voltage. So that's where a variac can come in very handy, bringing it down. And making sure that you're not overvolting your precious little output tubes in your amp.
I mean, if you want something that has a better readout, just get a brown box.
Exactly. Yeah. He did a great job with those. They really are useful, and I see more and more of them on stages.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people use them.
They're useful as long as you don't want to go up.
Right.
Like you could also be thinking with a variac, at least you could, if you have low wall voltage,
you can increase
up a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
A little bit, not within 10 volts or something.
Right.
Well,
but the brown box is just a little auto tranny that kind of takes it down. Right. That kind of drops it.
Which is cool though. It's got a great display, so you really can see. You can set it in bypass. You can read the actual voltage coming out of your wall, and then set the primary sort of according to that, and then drop it by a certain percentage amount, and it'll read the output voltage.
Right.
So you'll know what it is.
Cool. Yeah, it's important.
It's a little bit more automatic than a variac. A variac is something that you do have to control and use, which isn't a problem, but variacs can be kind of big and bulky too. I mean, because they're most of the time they're
they weigh. I've got one over here. It weighs it's got to be at least 10 pounds, 15 pounds.
So that's not something that you want to schlep around to jobs, but the brown box works great for that, and certainly isn't a bad idea. You're going to increase your tube life, and your amp's going to sound sweeter. It's going to sound, it's going to sound so much nicer. That high voltage just really kind of brings out a brittleness in your amps because not only are you increasing the plate voltage, you're increasing the filament voltage too. Because everything goes up when you bring in more power to your transformer. So instead of 6.3, you can be upwards to 7 or 7.3 volts on your filament. Now you're really cooking those tubes, man. You're going beyond the design center of your tubes. Which
my EL84s in the amps I have are they're running beyond what they should. I only use the JJs in that for the EL84s, and they're definitely running way beyond what should be
specified tube.
Right. Which they can't handle it. The thing that freaks people out maybe a little bit at some point in time is the fact that running them kind of hard, the plates might glow, meaning ruby red, but they're not running away. So they're not red plating.
Right.
Not running away. But after a while, they might get a little glow to them, because we're pushing them hard. It's sort of like the same power section that was in an old, 18 watt or 20 watt Marshall.
Right. And they were hard on 84s.
Which hard on 84s, but surprisingly, we don't really have that many EL 84 failures though. So they do last. They do last. They sound great that way though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I found a secret that I do in my stuff that helps me maintain some longevity with my 84s is I'll bring my screen voltage down a little bit. I'll use a little larger screen dropping resistor, so that you don't have the plate current, plate voltage, and screen voltage, all three of them being over. You're kind of controlling one and bringing it down, and that does kind of help the two last a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and that's an easy thing to do. You can.
Yeah, just a bigger value.
Exactly. A larger value screen resistor will kind of drop that down a bit.
Cool. Steve Rayburn, thanks for your question. What's the difference between the Maz Senior, the Maz Studio, and Maz Lite? Or Maz SR? Sorry.
Okay, well, that's actually the cabinet. I mean, the chassis are the same. The Studio cab is a smaller, kind of 17.5-inch width cabinet that's got a little slight angle on it. I kind of copied the old Music Man. If you remember the old Music Man cabinets, they were always kind of angled. So the base of the cabinet was like 10.5 inches, and the top was maybe 9.5 inches. So you had a nice little kind of rake and a little slope to the baffle board. Mm-hmm. And that's the Studio cab. Smaller, lighter, smaller footprint with a little bit of an angle. The Studio Lite is basically my larger 112 cab, if it's a 112 or a 210. And I use a kind of a poplar ply. It's an Italian imported plywood that's extremely lightweight, lighter than Baltic, and is very resonant. So it's almost kind of as resonant as pine. So I get a very nice sound from the cabinet, and I cut about 10 or 15 pounds off it. And that's the light. Yeah, nowadays everyone wants light. How much does it weigh? I do kind of like Baltic birch. I mean, it makes for a great sounding cabinet, very chunky, great crunch, but if you want a little bit more Fendery kind of tones, Americana kind of tones, a little bit more resonant cabinet, like one made of pine or this poplar ply, really does resonate almost kind of like a drum, and it kind of makes a smaller cab sound a bit bigger, basically.
Okay, nice. Okay, we got a question from BB Made. Is there a link to the amp build class from Bruce Egnator? So if you go to ampbuildingclass.com.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, ampbuildingclass.com is Bruce's site, and you can go on there and sign up and look at what it costs and everything like that. So I highly recommend it. I haven't gone to it. I've been meaning to. I just do too much traveling as it is.
Yeah, you should do it.
I do. I want to do it one day. I really do. First of all, just to hang out with Bruce would be cool, but learn how to make an amp would be awesome. They said, I just wish Egnator would do a California clinic. Yeah, well, he lives in...
maybe I'll talk him into that.
Well, yeah, that's actually not a bad idea, right?
We could do it in my shop.
Wow. There you go.
I don't know if he'll do it, but, hey, it's... I've also toyed with the idea of doing a class with him on a different build than he normally does. Something maybe more Friedman-esque. Mm-hmm. Which also would be really fun. I'm really just doing it for the fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Something
I've known
different.
Bruce forever. Bruce really helped me a lot in this industry, so you know, I really appreciate that. So
That's cool. He's a really good dude.
yeah, absolutely.
So, Purposeful Porpoise asks, is it bad to work on amps right after a shower? Probably, yeah.
I don't know. Try it.
I don't think it's very safe to work on an amp in the shower.
We'll see if you're here next show.
That's funny. James Maxwell, Lagavulin 16 and Tone Talk. Yes, Dave, it is really a superior scotch. You ever hear that?
Well, I would, yeah, absolutely. That's not how I pronounce it, but yes.
How do you pronounce it?
Right now. I'm not going to try because I've been having.
You got a few
It
yourself.
won't come out well.
Okay. All right. That's funny.
But that is a great scotch. I have had it. What I want to know is what is Sean drinking tonight? Because he's drinking something.
He says
he's very chatty in the chat.
Is he? Oh, I see him. Yeah. He says, kids, the BE 100 Deluxe is one of the best channel switching amps I've ever played. It's truly that good.
I know. That's why I said I had to send him audio.
That's cool. Let's see. I'm just going through the chat. I did have a question for you as I keep looking for more questions here because we got a ton of them. Mike, I'm curious. I know that you also work with Joe Walsh.
Yes.
Can you talk about your time working with Joe, how that came about, and what you've done working with him?
Okay, well, Joe is kind of an adopted son of Cleveland, even though he wasn't born in Cleveland. He was born in Wichita, Kansas, but he went to Kent State, and which is just outside of Cleveland. And Joe spent a lot of time playing. Had a band called The Measles. That was one of his earlier bands. Then there was a band called the James Gang, and they had a guitar player named Glenn Schwartz. Glenn left the James Gang to play with Pacific Gas and Electric. He was Guitar Glenn on Pacific Gas and Electric's band. So there was an opening, and Joe Walsh auditioned, and Joe Walsh got the job and became the James Gang. Going back to 1968, Cleveland had a thing called the Teen Fair, and it was a huge battle of the bands that they had. They did it for a couple of years. And the band that I was in came in second, and the winner of it that year was the James Gang, was Joe Walsh. So that was kind of the first kind of met. And it just goes to show you what second place does. It doesn't do shit. So they went on, and so I kind of knew Joe, and Joe was always, he does have a provocative kind of personality. And a lot of the stuff follows him about, destroying hotel rooms and being drunk and doing all that crazy stuff. But basically, he's a kind of a down-to-earth guy. He was born on a farm. I mean, he's got kind of, a kind of a very nice way about him, a very earthy kind of way about him. And he was always great. If you would go to a show that they were playing and you ask him a question about his guitar, he'd hand it to you. Here, man, check it out. He was very giving of his time as well as his information. It so happened that when the Hell Freezes Over tour started, I was able to get an amp to Joe. I knew his manager, David Spiro, at the time, and kind of said, man, I got an amp I think Joe would love. Oh, he's okay. Well, give it to me, and I'll see that he gets it. Mm-hmm. So he ended up using it on the Hell Freezes Over tour, and it I guess kind of gave Dr. Z some instant credibility, if you will. I had one of my amps on probably the biggest tour at that time that was going on.
Sure.
And Joe was a pretty loyal guy. I mean, he's used Z amps ever since. I currently have an amp that I make for him. It's a signature amp, basically. It's a copy of a kind of a copy of a 310 Bandmaster. Okay. Joe had this Bandmaster amp, and the James Gang went out on tour with the Who. Pete Townsend saw them and took them out. Kind of broke the James Gang basically at that time. And Joe and Pete became friends, and they kind of, at the end of the tour, they kind of did what you see football players do now, where they kind of exchange jerseys after a game with each other. Well, Joe and Pete kind of exchanged equipment. Joe gave Pete a Gretsch 6120 and this 57 Tweed Bandmaster. And in exchange, Joe got a Rickenbacker guitar and a high-watt half-stack from Pete. Well, Pete Townsend went on to record the Who's next album with that amp and that guitar. And Joe's never forgot it. I should have never gave him that damn. That was the best sounding amp I ever had. I don't know how many times I heard Joe tell me that in my ear. So finally, he ended up buying a Fender made a reissue of the 57 Bandmaster. I think 2014, maybe about 5 years ago, something came out with a limited edition 310 Bandmaster copy. So, of course, Joe bought one. There was one of 75 or one of 50, whatever. It was a limited run. And Joe wasn't real wild about it. I don't want to diss Fender, but it didn't sound like the one that he had to him. He wasn't happy with the sound of it. He says, I'm going to throw it in the pool. I said, Joe, don't do that. I said, send it to me. Let me see what I can do with it. Maybe I can do something with it. So basically, I got the amp and I kind of tweaked it up. I have a friend that works at Triad Transformers in California. Kind of did a little research on the Bandmaster and found out the 1848 model output tranny. Kind of a mismatched impedance because it's a 310 configuration. Kind of is what made that amp sound a lot like it sounded. So I was able to get them to duplicate and make 2 of those trannies for me, and they did. So I put that in the Fender. I got some speakers made by Eminence, basically, Slug Alnico 10s, kind of a nice split cone, but with a paper voice coil. So they kind of had a nice kind of vintage tone to them. So I put those in there and put Jupiter coupling caps in it. Jupiter are pretty nice caps. They sound very good in older Fender circuits. They do kind of sound like Asterons, as close as you can get to the wax-impregnated Asteron capacitors. So, I put those in it and kind of tweaked the amp up for Joe, and he loved it. He goes, oh, man, this is great. You got to make me one. So I've got one that's fresh from you. I said, okay. So I did. And he took it out and used it last year on tour with the Eagles, and then used it this year again. He went to Europe with it. And, one thing led to another, and it turned out to be a Joe Walsh signature amp. It's available through Sweetwater exclusively. Cool. And, it's doing real well. It's a very nice sounding amp. There's a piano clarity to the amp. It's kind of amazing. And the 310 design is a little unique. I mean, it kind of doesn't sound like anything else. Joe calls me up from time to time with ideas that he has and wants me to make something for him.
That's super cool.
It's kind of hard to say no to Joe Walsh. And I
Exactly.
try my best. I can't say that I hit a home run every time, but I try to. There's another amp that I did that was an idea of his. It's called the Z Plus. And basically, it's a single-ended amp, but it's a parallel single-ended amp. So there's one 6V6, and then there's a parallel 6V6 that runs in true Class A. So it's either 7 watts or 15 watts. Yeah. So you get a little bit more push. And Joe always liked champs. I mean, that was kind of Funk 49. He recorded Funk 49 through a champ.
Did he really?
Right? So that was always kind of what he liked. And this Z Plus was kind of an idea. And it is basically a design that you see in stereos. You know, hi-fi stereos kind of use that parallel single-ended in like dual triodes, like 300Bs a lot of times. So that was kind of the output design. I incorporated it into an amp. And it's a pretty cool amp. That's the Z Plus.
The Z Plus.
So yeah, Joe's been an inspiration. The same as Brad. You know, he's come up with a bunch of ideas, things that he likes. You know, I'm sure Dave can attest to that too. That artists that come to him and say, "I want this" or "I want that. Can you do this? Can you do that?" And it's kind of nice because it gives us some inspiration. You know, it gives us a little challenge, if you will. And if you can make guys like them happy, well, you're doing a pretty good job, I would say.
I would agree.
Yeah, it's always fun when the artist comes to you or whoever and asks you for something, and you're like, "Huh, I think I could do that, sure." Right. And then meanwhile, you're not quite figured it out in your head yet, but okay, I'm going to sit down and figure this out, but I think I can do that, yeah. And
right,
then, And then that inspires something that's, you know, cool. You know?
Right.
I love that.
We need inspiration. You know, you can't, and it's funny where it comes from, you know, and everybody's walk of life, you know, you need some inspiration from time to time. You know, it's pretty cool. You get a phone call from Billy Gibbons or Joe Walsh or Brad Paisley or Brad, you know.
I love Billy.
Yeah, I
know. Billy's awesome, man. You know, the funny thing is, the story is a couple of years ago when he was doing this solo tour that he did with this more Cuban-based band. He strolled in from across the street. He was rehearsing across the street, and he strolled in my shop from across the street. And he came and introduced himself. "Hey, I'm Billy Gibbons." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I mean, he walks in the door. Yeah, you are. Yes. I mean, it's definitely, I understand who you are.
Yeah.
And then he proceeded to like hang out forever. And just talking and hanging out, and one of the coolest artists I've ever met.
That's awesome.
Just oozing cool, you know, like it's crazy. And then he proceeded to come back several days in a row.
That's awesome.
Just hanging. He bought an amp. Bought a little Pink Taco, little 20 watt.
Nice.
Which he used some on that tour, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, he loved it.
He's playing Magnetone now.
These guys love gear. I mean,
well, he had Magnetone on that tour also, but I mean, like he was playing some of the Pink Taco, and you know,
he switches around.
He's got a lot of stuff, but you know, hey, and every once in a while, I still get a phone call from him out of the blue. That's always a trip, kind of for me, like with him. He's such an interesting character, you know. And such a sweetheart of a guy.
And such a history.
Oh my God, yes. In fact, we need to have him on Tone Talk.
Get him on.
I am going to try to do that show. Thinking of that.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
That would be unbelievable.
He's so cool. I saw him with Kings of Chaos.
Yeah.
which was a great show.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just ripped. His tone, even with eights and a hollow guitar, his tone still sounds great. That's where you know it's in the fingers, right?
It's in his hand.
Right. It's in the fingers.
Yeah.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
We had a question from, or actually a comment from Sean Tubbs. He says, love the Dr. Z YouTube channel. So I wanted to say, you guys check out the Dr. Z YouTube channel and his AMA video series, which is Ask Me Anything. Super cool videos, lots of really great information. Definitely check it out. So thanks for the comment, Sean.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate it.
I think you mentioned this earlier, but Brent Harmon says, if you already answered, you don't have to answer again, Mike, but he wants to know how you came up with the Carmen Gia. I think you said it before, right?
Yeah, well, how I really came, if you want to get a little bit more history into it.
Sure.
I met an individual, his name was Charlie Jobe. And when I met Charlie Jobe, he was in his late 70s. But he was the Hammond organ king. If you look at Jimmy Smith's jazz albums, his jazz Hammond albums, you will constantly see credits to Charlie Jobe. He would get an organ, he'd send it right to Charlie, and Charlie would do all his percussive mods to it, all of the different things that he did. Charlie was the first guy to chop a B3, kind of do the coffin kind of thing for a B3 to carry it around. So he was synonymous with a lot of it. He would go to the NAMM shows, and Hammond would, hold. We got Charlie Jobe, and they'd hold him up. He was a character, unbelievable character. And I happened to meet him, and I went to his house, and it was just filled from floor to ceiling with just all kinds of musical instruments. And I'm going around talking to him, and I saw on these shelves there were these little chassis, and they had two EL-84s in them, two 12AX7s, a really nice little transformer set. And I kind of looked at my man, and this was the time when, the 18-watt Marshall was people were kind of finding out about them. We're talking in the 80s, how cool those little amps were. And I looked at those, and I went, man, Charlie, I said, I bet that would make a nice guitar amp, man. And he goes, those are reverb amps, man. He goes, a Hammond doesn't need goddamn reverb, These are Leslie, but you take this little amp and you tie it to the speaker. Its input would be one of the speakers, and it would run a little reverb tub and have its own little speaker. So you had your kind of little separate reverb unit that you could add on as an option to a Hammond. So he had like three of them. And I said, man, I'll buy all three of those from you. And he goes, all right, I don't want them, I said, okay. So I took them and I just started playing with them. And I started modifying them and turned them into Carmen Gias. Kind of did a front end, kind of volume control, input jack front end. Did a kind of a unique tone control, which to this day is still rather unique. I kind of did the idea of a sweeping wah-wah pedal is what was in my head. If you take a wah-wah, you can kind of sweep the mid-range response of a wah-wah pedal. That's basically how the tone control works. So you've got treble and bass, but you're kind of varying your smiley face, your little scooped mid. You're kind of moving it as you turn the control.
I think I have one of your amps in my shop that's been there for a long time, and I'm pretty sure might be a Carmen Gia, and it has a volume and a tone control like what you're talking about.
Right.
And I always thought, wow, this tone control is really cool because one way, like really bright, but then as you turn it, it goes through all these spectrums of like fat and mid-range and everything else. Like it was cool. It was so simple, It was like, was it a volume, a tone control, and maybe a cut or something like that? Or
kind of. There's a little voltage divider, a couple of caps,
and
a 500K pot, and kind of went together and then turned into this pretty cool tone control as I was playing with the values and tweaking it.
Yeah.
And it had a great bass, EL84 output with a wonderful output tranny that Hammond organ designed. A massive power transformer. This power tranny looked like it belonged in a twin reverb. It was so big. And it was pretty cool. It had all the old, carbon comp, resistors in it, all the old great sounding stuff. And I used as much as I could. I made my own board and kind of took those chassis and made amps. And I would take them to guitar shows. And cats were going crazy over them. They wanted them, So one day I'm at a guitar show, and some guy's looking. He looks around the back of the amp. He goes, "Man, that's a Hammond reverb chassis, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, it's exactly what it is." He goes, "I bought a factory in Chicago, and there were 2 skids of these things inside it." I says, "I'll buy every one of them, man. How much do you want for the 2 skids?" And I end up getting, 25 or 30 of them or whatever.
Wow.
From this guy. So we'll make 25 or 30 Carmen Gias. Then there was a guy that advertised in vintage guitar. It was BB Organ is the ad. I don't know if you're familiar with the ads. If you look at old vintage guitar magazines, you'll see the ads. And he was a good contact for me because he would get those checked. And when I told him, whenever you get one, send it to me. So finally, it kind of dried up. I think I ended up making around 50 or so of the original Carmen Gias on the Hammond chassis. So, I just kind of duplicated the transformers and built my own chassis and just started making them from scratch, basically, because I couldn't get any more of the parts that I was able to get to make the Hammond ones. And that's it. That's the story of the Carmen Gia. And yes, it was an HO, which was Hammond organ, -035 is the model number of that specific one. They made different model reverb amps, but that was the coolest one. And that was the one I used for the Carmen Gia. So there you go.
Very cool.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
We got a question from KXM Rock. Where's Dave watching from? You're in a hotel in Ventura.
I'm watching from the Marriott Hotel in Ventura, California.
All right. Having some fun.
There's not a nice couch in my room.
Here's a good question. Dave, how do I run my BE100 in stereo with two 2x12 cabs?
If you just have one BE100, you can't run it in stereo. So there's the answer for that. You can run 2 cabs off the 1 amp, sure. Just plug them in. Set the impedance accordingly.
Cool. More Guitars says, God, how I love this damn show. Thanks a million, Mark and Dave. You have no idea how much it's appreciated. Your comments appreciated, man. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that means a lot.
You can watch our stupid asses up here interviewing people. Sometimes drunk.
Yes.
Maybe not Mark. Mark's never gotten out of control. I think Mark has to get out of control one time on the air. I think that'll be great.
It'll happen. But you have to take over. You have to take over the control.
I have spearheaded that.
You never know.
Spearheaded that several times. But I think Mark definitely. Yeah,
I need to lose.
I'll have to take the reins then.
Yeah, you have to take the reins. Exactly. You have to take the reins. You'll have to run the show because I will. I won't. I'll be useless. So. Yeah. Let's see. I'm just going through if there's any other questions because we're running.
No, I have run off the rails religiously several times. So.
Yes, a couple times.
Yes.
The Jakey Lee is.
Well, a couple times.
Yeah, no.
2 or 3. How many episodes?
What's that?
2 or 3 and how many episodes?
Yeah, and 53. So.
53 episodes. So that's not too bad. It's a pretty good pretty good failure rate.
Exactly. That's funny. Dr. Z, this is a good question.
But generally speaking, when I do run off the rails, people love it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So,
People were like, "That was the best show ever."
like the Jakey Lee episode was totally off the rails, and that was the best episode ever.
and the John Surf, Pete Thorne episode, no, it was the Pete Thorne
George Pahone
show.
Yes, that's that was a good one too. And people love that. I guess they like people watching people get drunk.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do this as the last question, and then I've got one last question after that. So Nick asks, Dr. Z, what amp are you most proud of creating?
Ooh. Well, I each amp that I make is kind of like one of my kids. It's kind of say, which one do you love the most? It's kind of hard to say. I kind of dig them all, especially when they come out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, and whatever, just like children. But I don't know. Probably the Maz 18, I think, is the amp that probably has done the best as far as sales are concerned. I think I built over 7,000 of them, of that model. And it's kind of cool because it is a kind of a unique design. The Carmen Gia was kind of a spin of the Hammond organ, and SRZ 65 was kind of a spin of a JCM 800, and so many of our amps you can kind of go to the root of it. But the Maz 18 is pretty original, and I think because of that, that's what kind of gave it its longevity as well as its kind of popularity. A little different. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Nice. And what are you working on next? What's coming up next for Dr. Z?
Well, I got a kind of a cool one coming out. I'll tell you the prefix story to it. It's kind of a cool story. Some guy calls me up and wanted a tour of my shop. I said, well, dude, it's going to take you 5 minutes. Not that big of a shop, man. I don't expect too much here. But I said, yeah, sure, come down.
Close the door.
So he came, and he was all excited and, very happy for me to give him a tour of my shop and whatever. So we started talking, and I found out about his business. He started telling me about his business. And basically, he's got a company that kind of flies over large buildings, and they scan the roofs of the buildings, and they do it during the day, and then they do it at night, hot and cold. They do some kind of algorithm in a software program, and they can determine the quality of the roof, and they can determine where it needs to be repaired, so that a company doesn't have to have its 80,000 square foot roof completely done. He comes at him and says, okay, you need this done, and that's it. So it's a kind of a way of saving money. He's got contracts with all the post offices in the United States, also all of the Walmarts. So he's got pretty hooked up, this guy. And he just hires pilots. And my son's a pilot. So the father in me, says, oh, yeah, you got any openings?
Mm-hmm.
And my son's looking for a job. So one thing led to another, and he tells me about this amp that he has. That's an old Ampeg reverber rocket, and it's not working. And he's very proud of this little amp because it's the amp that Keith Richards used on Exile on Main Street. Not the exact one, but he used that model. So I did a little research online, and yeah, he used a reverber rocket on Exile on Main Street,
It's a great amp.
Yeah. So I said, I'll tell you what, you give my son an interview. I don't normally work on amps that don't have a Z on them. I only work on Z amps. But I'll tell you what, I'll work on that amp of yours. You can get my son an interview. So he brings the amp in. I was kind of curious to hear what it sounded like anyway. And it wasn't that difficult to fix. I mean, Ampegs were made great. They're very stout amps. A little capacitor and some output tubes, and a little this and that. The reverb tape was broken, so I fixed it up and got it working for him. Played the amp, and I'm like, holy shit, this does sound pretty cool. So it runs 7591s, which are kind of unique output tubes. Ampeg used them, Supro used them. You'll find a lot of audio applications for them. A lot of stereos use those tubes. And JJ makes them, so they're in current production. And they're not bad. You know, the new old stock ones certainly sound a bit better. But the JJs sound pretty damn good. So I had been thinking in my mind, you know, about the way the economy is and the way the music industry is and building amps. And I said to myself, you know, I would love to put out a kind of a low-cost handmade amp, kind of a simple little amp. Somewhere, you know, around $1,300, $1,399, whatever, kind of as the price point, and make a little 112 combo. So once I heard this reverb, this jet, I thought, man, that'd be the perfect one to do it. So I kind of did some research, and I ended up looking at just basic jets, the old Ampeg jet, which is a much simpler design. Didn't have reverb, didn't have tremolo, it was a single channel. So it kind of fit the design criteria that I wanted, meaning that it was simpler, less parts, and I could make it less expensively. So I kind of threw together this jet. I call it a Jetta, basically. Kind of goes with the Carmen Ghia. It's a 3-knob amp. It has a post-phase inverter master volume. I put a master volume on it. And I put in a Metro zero loss effects in it. Guys seem to want, you got to have master volume and you got to have effects loop are the two things that seem to be in most demand nowadays on amps. So basically that's it. That's the Jetta. It'll probably be coming out. Man, I hope to have it out by the holidays because I think it'll be a good product to have out at that time at that price point. And it sounds damn good, man. You know, the 7591s have a unique sound to them. They don't really sound like anything else. They don't sound like 84s. They don't sound like 6V6s. And they're kind of cool sounded, man. And so that's what you're going to see come out.
Cool.
I did do a search, copyright, paid an attorney to do the copyright search and a copyright of the name to make sure that I'm not going to be infringing on Volkswagen.
Yeah.
And basically, you know, because it's not an automobile product, you know, it's not generally a problem. People are going to get confused, thinking they could drive this little amp around or something.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm going. I mean, there's certainly not a big margin in it, as you can understand. But it will keep my guys working. It'll keep my shop going a little bit, and I think it'll hit a niche that I think people are looking for now. You know, as far as a little bit lower cost, kind of cool handmade amp coming in, American-made components, great parts.
Cool.
At $13.99 price point. So that's what's in the works for Dr. Z.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. So if you guys want to find Dr. Z products, I know you're at Sweetwater.
Yes.
And I know Sweetwater is actually having a whole sale. So guys, check out Sweetwater and all the stuff that they've got going on. I want to thank you, Mike, for coming on the show.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. Yeah. Nice hanging with you guys, man.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, it's awesome hanging with you.
Great show, man. You guys do a great job. This is
thank you.
An excellent thing, and I'm sure that I don't know how many people watch it or stream it or whatever they do, but I know it's very popular and it's great.
Well, thank you. That's
really
awesome.
bring out a lot of good information for people.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
awesome. It's awesome having guests like you on. So thank you for coming on. We've got a few other guests coming on that are lined up. On the 26th, we've got Steve Vai.
Wow.
We're still working on the time, so it looks like, yeah, that's an awesome guest.
Could be early in the day, could be later in the day. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, we're waiting to confirm the time, but that's August 26th. And then I'm still working it out, but I think August 30th, but it might be too close to Steve, so I may push it out. We've got Frank Fleckenstein from Reverb coming on, and he'll talk about all the stuff that's going on with Reverb. They just sold to Etsy.
Yeah. Right.
So we'll talk about what that all means for Reverb and what's happening. And that's it for right now. So again, thank you for coming on, Mike.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And everybody have a great weekend. We'll be seeing you soon.
And guys, hit subscribe if you're not subscribing to our channel, please.
Yes.
And hit the thumbs up button also. That's always nice. And and leave some nice comments if you want.
Definitely.
Nice hanging with you two guys tonight, man.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome.
It's great, Mike.
Thank you.
See you all again.
Yeah, hang on 1 second while I hang up. And everybody have a great weekend. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.